I think what I'd love to build in with you gals, because you're both moms, we're all parents here. So one of my beefs being a parent is this concept that starts very early on. I don't know who came up with this, but when something's happening with your child, especially when they're maybe on the younger years, that they're going through a phase, and kind of this adage of, oh, this is just a phase, like this too shall pass. When really there could be some like very key behavioral indicators that something is going on with that child. Is someone abusing that child? Is he or she being bullied at school and that child's not talking about it at home? So for me, I think some of the parental blinders is that we kind of tell each other these stories because, hi, there's no manual to be a parent, right? We don't get a parenting handbook. But the ones that do exist, like what to expect when you're expecting, what to expect the first year, there's no information in there about how to protect your children from predators. It's all this other stuff. But just like we teach our kids safety, we should be teaching them about body safety. And if somebody does something to them, what to communicate to the parents, and for the parent, be the number one advocate for the child. So I think like from a parent point of view, that's where I really want to kind of hear more from you ladies also, is we all wear different hats, whether it's, you know, running this nonprofit or advocating for legislation and different changes, or for stopping educator abuse. But for me, it's, you know, there's a disconnect between like what parents get information or they don't, very little so far, which is why we launched P.A.X.A, and then like kind of being in tune with your child and then believing your child. Any thoughts about any of that?
Oh, absolutely. Start early. It's never too early to start. From the moment you have that baby, you start early and just make it common knowledge. You have all of these other conversations with your child. Don't touch a hot stove, you know, don't knock this over or that over, don't climb on a shelf. You know, this just has to be on that same level. That's right. And very matter of fact. You know, these discussions so that they grow up learning to talk and trust you with anything that's happening in their life. And just, and there's so many great programs out there, you know, for this type of parental training. So, you know, again, they don't come with a manual, you know, so it's up to us as parents to be proactive and get that information ourselves so that we can best protect and rear our child's, you know, in healthy environments, no matter where they are.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, I think that there's the component of making sure you have open lines of communication with your child and addressing things like body safety, and being the first, you know, being your child's primary sex educator, you know, talking to them about things like that, just age appropriate conversation, so that you remove the stigma and shame just between the two of you, you know, between parents and children, so they know they can come to you with anything. So that's one component. And then I think the other component is just being aware of what's going on in their lives, being attuned, that Tania used that word, just attuned to what's going on, but also aware of the adults that they spend time with. So it doesn't mean that no adults can be trusted, but, you know, if someone's spending an inordinate amount of your child, you know, time with your child, why are they doing that? You know, are they always wanting to give extra help? Like, and maybe they are, but, you know, stop in and check, talk to your child, you know, show up unannounced, things like that. Because I mean, basic supervision is also part of this, where you just, you know, knowing where your child is. And I'm not saying that in a way of blaming parents for when stuff happens. I don't mean it that way, but just being aware of the adults they're interacting with and having those feelers up for, if the two things, that the simplest way I can boil it down, if I was talking to a parent who knew nothing about this, is the time they're spending with adults. Is there an inordinate amount of time spent with one particular adult? And is that paired with changes in behavior? Because the types of signs that can show abuse are also indicators of a number of other things. I mean, they could be from other stressors, anxiety, like you said, it could be bullying. There's so many different ways that kids display distress, and it could be from a number of different, you know, inputs. But those two things together, to me, are the biggest red flag, when there's the huge amount of time or desire or like fear of spending time with an adult, paired with that change in behavior. Because, you know, I've heard one speaker say, you know, their child got super, you know, quiet and reserved, but another child got more outgoing. Like, not every child is going to follow the same pattern, but those two things together, to me, are the biggest indicators. And what Terri was talking about, you know, spending the time with the teacher, being withdrawn from friends, like that is a playbook of what happened to me. And my mom knew something was wrong, but she didn't know what. And I've heard that from other survivors, or read that about other survivors. The parents, they know something is wrong, but they don't know what. And then unfortunately, then when they finally found out, they feel all this guilt because they're like, but I knew my child, but how could I have prevented this? And it's not their fault. It's not their fault that another adult did this, but that's why education and being aware of that is so key. So that you do feel empowered to know what to do about it. Because my mom, and like I said, other mothers of survivors, they knew something was up. They didn't know how prevalent this problem was.